All right, welcome to Pardon the Corruption. My guest today is James Holas. You know him as Snotty Drippin on Twitter, and he's shining as an obscene Celtics logo. That's because he's a Celtics fan. I'm not sure what he's doing on the show, but here we are. The Celtics did beat the Raptors 126-114 in what can best be described as a mild upset because Kemba Walker and Marcus Smart were not playing, but that did not stop the Celtics from stating their dominance or reiterating or emphasizing their dominance on the Raptors as they beat them rather convincingly, really, at the end. James, you're a Celtics fan, so let's get the gloating out of the way in the first minute. Go ahead. The floor is yours. Go ahead. Do it, man.
So I'm not going to really gloat. Obviously, I'm going to respect your show and your audience. Obviously, the superior team won. We showed it in the playoffs last year that we were vastly superior. The gulf was opened up a little bit wider. So it's like, I'm not going to punch down and gloat now. Now, seriously, I'm pretty shocked by the results. So it was a good win for the Celtics. And we're going to talk about the Raptors, obviously, because this is not what I expected at all from Toronto this season.
Well, the Raptors did lose two big guys in the offseason, Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka. I mean, arguably, all-star level players, and they replaced them with Aaron Baines and Chris Boucher. I mean, when you saw that happening, I mean, you kind of already knew. You didn't really need to watch this game to know that the Raptors have taken a step back this year, just on account of the personnel changes.
Yeah, so let's not all-star level players. Mark hasn't been an all-star since like 2013, 12, whatever. Serge, I don't think has ever been an all-star, but he's a great defender. He's a very strong defender. Obviously, Serge, I think, was a bigger loss than Mark because we saw in the playoffs, Mark sometimes was almost unplayable last year. But I didn't think – I knew it would be a step back. I didn't think we would see what we're seeing right now, where it seemed like the Raptors are kind of unraveling. I did not expect them to be, one of the two teams in the league with only one win. They're towards the bottom of the league in net rating, offensive rating. It's quite a surprise. So this game didn't go the way I thought it was going to go.
And you kind of made a point that when we were talking offline that there's a lack of energy around the Raptors. And you said like last year, maybe the sum of the parts was greater than the whole, actually. And the Raptors got more out of the people they had than what they appear to be getting this year. Like, what did you observe there?
So last year, I had, as a Celtics fan, I had a grudging respect for what the Raptors did. I didn't think that they'd be as good as they were going into the season last year. They seemed like they almost hardly missed a beat without Kawhi as far as regular season wise. Pascal took a big step forward. Kyle Lowry is such a strong leader and is still a great player on the court. And this last year, they seemed to almost have really band together, all in together. Everyone played for each other. They played hard. The bench guys came in and did the exact same thing. Nick Nurse was hailed, rightfully so, as like a genius young coach. Very creative defensive schemes. And this year it's completely different. I feel almost like maybe there was like a honeymoon period after the championship, right? I mean, hey, any team wins a championship, they have every right to be happy. But they didn't seem like they were satisfied, and they played extra hungry the next year. And somehow I feel like that energy is starting to wear off a little bit, and like that magic starting to wear off a little bit. And we're starting to see some cracks in the armor, So yeah, it's interesting to watch. It's fascinating.
And the Raptors defensively, I mean, I was on Twitter for this game and I broke down a few clips, and you saw the Raptors really try to switch aggressively on pretty much every single possession and get caught on big on small matchups. And Siakam was guarding what's the point guard? Pritchard, yeah. And he got baked by him off the dribble, and then some other guy came in. The rotation was late, offensive rebounds everywhere. So the overhelping seems to be hurting the Raptors, where previously they had the personnel to kind of overhelp and recover. This year, it seems to be overhelp and then pay the price.
And that's where Serge Ibaka, I think, comes in, and even Mark, because Mark is such a smart player. Positionally, he was a very strong defender, right? He really couldn't move very well last year, but he just knew where to be. He was like the quarterback of that defense. And then Ibaka was still a strong, a little bit, not a little more mobile than Mark. Still really couldn't switch out, but he did, he was Ibaka. And just having those two guys gone and Boucher, Boucher is not getting it done. Boucher. Yeah, Boucher is not, he's not showing like really good defensive chops, even with his length and his wingspan. it's a domino effect. It all seems like it's, because of that, like you said, everyone else is over rotating, everyone else is maybe overcommitting a little bit, and then the rotations last year was like clockwork. You could see this team just boom, boom. That's why that playoff series was so great, right? Because once Toronto locked in, even with the small backcourt, like they really play with effort and intensity and like precision, and we're not seeing that this year, and I don't quite understand why.
Well, I think part of it really is the fact that when you are so stretched on defense, fourth quarter comes, you're going to get tired. And when you get tired legs, you can't really defend no matter how good you may be from a talent perspective defensively because you're overstretched. And then like going on to the other side of the court, obviously Siakam has been a big talking point, and you saw today why. I mean, there were a few plays here. I mean, he had a couple of nice plays. He had the dunk, and then he had a 3-point play. But you saw instances where he just looks lost. There was one play where I think he had Pritchard on him in the block, one-on-one, alone under the basket, and he traveled, right? So that situational awareness seems to be missing from the guy. Like, as an outsider, what have you observed about Siakam? Is there a difference over the last year that you've seen something has changed? Or because you bring maybe a fresh perspective to this, because the Raptor fans are, I find, a little too overcritical of Siakam at this point, just because it's the first year where this really is his team. What have you observed on Siakam's game?
I've observed this incredible live wire, this incredible ascent. He came up so fast, and he seemed to really be growing and taking that mantle of being he was an all-star last year, and he looked like it, 23, 25 points a game. It's some really big offensive explosion, unstoppable in the open court. But then I think that teams get film on a guy and they come up with a game plan because he is that guy now, right? Lowry's great, Fred VanVleet's great, but he was that focal point offensively, sort of. And the game plan was obviously build a wall, don't let him get up to speed. And correct me if I'm wrong, going to the bubble, he said he didn't touch a basketball for like 2 months, right? He didn't really say I didn't touch a basketball for months.
He was in his condo locked up.
Yeah, so his rhythm obviously was off. He fell back behind, and he never got back up to speed. And then, we have a short turnaround. And honestly, I think the big thing with him, confidence, right? For upper level at basketball play, all basketball players actually, confidence is such a huge thing. And I feel like coming into the bubble, being unprepared and not being up to speed shook his confidence. Then playing the Celtics were basically built to play a guy like him with a lot of long athletes, very smart, disciplined defense, broke his confidence a little more. And it seems like he still is trying to catch back up. And now he's kind of caught in between where we saw flashes, like you said tonight, but the jumper still doesn't look good. He doesn't look very assertive sometimes. He takes too long. He's plotting. He's thinking. You can see he's thinking out there. And that's not going to get it done. So I feel like a big part of it is confidence right now with Siakam.
And man, you make a great point because, sometimes you play on teams where there are other great players who, when they play well, you get your confidence from them. Like it's almost like it's almost transfers over. You see your boy doing something great on the court. You kind of pick up on that and you start upping your game up a little. Right now for the Raptors, they don't really have another guy Siakam can kind of look up to and kind of ride the coattails a little bit and kind of bring that confidence up. The only guy that's playing kind of relatively well has been Fred VanVleet from a guard position, but everybody else is sort of taking a step back. I guess the only other guy, maybe you haven't seen him much this year, but Chris Boucher has had a pretty good start to the season except this game. But there's nobody else on the team that Siakam can kind of look up to build that confidence.
So let me ask you this, and you know Boy better than I do, but from the outside looking in, I always felt that Kyle Lowry was kind of the soul. Like Marcus Smart is the heart and soul of Boston. He's not their best player. Kyle Lowry is actually their best player, and he's their heart and soul, right? He kind of pats it around the butt to get him going. Mm-hmm. He's kind of like rallies around him. Mm-hmm. What's going on there? Because up until now, it seemed like that was working, and now is he not reaching Siakam? Did something change?
Well, I think Lowry is a guy who, first of all, Lowry's overplayed already. Like one of the plans for this season was to actually reduce Lowry's minutes from like 36.2 he averaged last year down to like maybe low 30s, even maybe under 30, so he gets some rest. Instead, what's happened, it's the opposite because everybody else is playing so poorly that Lowry needs to be extended. He's averaging like 37 and a half minutes a game this year, which is more than last year. So the plan of resting Lowry has just gone out the window, and instead we're overplaying him. And Lowry's never been he definitely is the emotional leader of the Raptors. I think he tries to reach out to players, tries to big them up and all that. But I'm talking about carrying scoring weight on the team. Like Lowry's never been like a guy who will carry your entire scoring weight, and so other guys can take maybe a night off. He's more of a leader, assist guy, make sure everybody's up, but he's not going to carry your team from a scoring perspective night in and night out. And I feel like now that pressure of scoring is on Siakam, he's taken it like it's weighing him down, and it's also affecting the non-scoring parts of his game, as we saw on defense in this game.
So let me ask, again, I'm asking you, and this is a great conversation because I've been wondering about this, but isn't this by design, right? They paid Siakam a max, near max contract, correct? Because they looked at his skill set and the way his development was coming and said, all right, well, we're going to gamble that he can be maybe not the, obviously Kyle's still the heart and soul, but the premium offensive player on a really good team. And last year he was, like, he led the team in scoring. Van Vliet looked like a really good, miniature Robin at least. Yeah. This year, I guess both of them aren't shooting very well. And so I guess the question is, where do they go now? If this is the gamble, and obviously we can't call it failure, right? It's only year two of a I think his extension just kicking in this year, right? Or whatever. The point is, like, he's still really young. He's just getting used to that role. But it's not working out right now. What's the next step?
Well, I think you asked two questions there, really. I mean, one is like what happened? Isn't this by design? And what to do next? Like, this is by design. But I think I wrote an article today where it's like I felt like three fundamental assumptions that the Raptors took this year have proven wrong. First, their defense is not as good as they thought it was. We're seeing that night in and night out where they're getting blasted on the offensive glass. They're not able to control the boards. Forget about controlling the paint. And they can't even run on transition because they can't collect the defensive board quick enough. So that's one. Their defense isn't as good as they thought it might be. Second is Siakam, where they thought maybe that what we saw against the Celtics in the playoff last season was more of a blip and it would go away and he would kind of rejuvenate and find himself and become the player that we hope he was. That really hasn't happened. And the third thing that has not held true is their depth. They really are not as deep as a team as we had hoped. Guys like Norman Powell are falling short. Matt Thomas is a guy that we kind of relied on to give us some points and three-point shooting. He hasn't really played much. You have Terrence Davis, who's had like legal problems off the court. You saw at the end of the game today where we almost came back like to 10, and he messed up twice. So he's not in the right headspace. Malachi Flynn isn't getting much playing time. You got a little bit today for the first time all season. Fred, so what all this has done, all these underperforming bench players, what this has done is that it's put even more pressure on the starters to actually produce more. And hence you see Kyle Lowry getting extended, Fred VanVleet basically taking every shot that's on offer. So the Raptors, it's almost like their plan A, B, and C haven't really worked. So now they're on to like plan D, which is just like, I don't know, man, Fred, shoot the ball every time.
Yeah, waiting in prayer.
Yeah. And as for your other question, like what to do next, I don't know. Maybe this is a year where you just kind of acknowledge to yourself that you're not going to compete in the East, because we're still kind of telling ourselves the story that we may, we will make it to the playoffs, maybe win the first round easily, then second round we might do something. Maybe it's time to actually call this a development year, because that's what it sort of looks like at least 6-7 games in.
So this is what's so fascinating. I'm not going to gloat. I'm not going to do the Celtics fan thing here. But last year it was, wow, Nick Nurse is a genius. Nick Nurse is the third, second, maybe one, it may be arguably the best coach in the NBA. And he earned that right. So I'm not talking crap. I'm not talking trash about him. We are seeing, it's only five, how many games is it now? 7 games?
Yeah.
All right. So there's a lot of basketball left to be played. And he has, he's obviously feeling things out. But this is going to test that level of genius, right? You got to come up with a scheme with the personnel you have. Fascinating again to me is that I think when you look at team building, we saw they brought Kawhi in, boom, it happened. You need a tent pole player, you need a sun for the rest of your players to orbit around. You have whatever you got to do. Like we look at the Lakers, they got 2 guys, 2 super duper stars, and everything comes off of them. You need, if you're going to be an effective team and compete, you want a high-level star for everyone else to play off of. And obviously, you say, I can have that guy. Kyle Lowry, I don't think he can play like the guy in spurts. He's not that guy. Van Vliet's not that guy. So how do you build a team that shares the ball and shares the energy they had last year without that singular talent? And it's I think Raptors last year seemed to kind of disprove that you needed that guy. But, as we get further away from that championship and that energy, and the energy sort of turns now, and they're kind of all looking at each other, it's fascinating. It's really fascinating to watch.
Man,
the
only team that I think won a title without a legit star player was in the last 20 years, maybe, is the 2004 Detroit Pistons.
We can say that, but Ben Wallace was a defensive superstar.
Yeah, but I'm saying he's not a tent. We're kind of getting sidetracked. But I'm saying, like, there has been some precedent on teams winning titles without a marquee offensive player.
You're saying offensive player. I'm saying a star. It doesn't have to be offense necessarily, right? Because Ben Wallace was a legitimate superstar, and then Chauncey Billups had that charisma, that kind of Kyle Lowry factor, where he was really good and he could play like a superstar at times, but he just kind of rallied everybody around him. So you're right. We're getting lost in the conversation. But right now there is no defensive or offensive superstar.
Right.
In Toronto,
you brought up Nick Nurse, right? And I think, coaches are only as good as the players that they have. Whether it be Phil Jackson or Pat Riley or pick your guy. Right. Those guys all had like superstar players, and they knew how to kind of blend all those players together from a personality perspective, almost more than a basketball perspective. Now, Nick, I don't have any qualms about Nick Nurse. He's a coach, and like if you give him talent, I think he's proven that he can make that talent work. I just don't think he may not have the right amount of talent on this team to make it work. But going back to your question on how do you get that tentpole player? Well, the Raptors, by design, and this is stated by Masai Ujiri as part of their strategy and team development, is that we are a team that will always have enough assets out there on our balance sheet, so that when an opportunity comes along, we will not be outsiders to that opportunity, and we will be able to compete when that opportunity pops up. And that's exactly what happened with Kawhi Leonard. An opportunity popped up. He was unhappy in San Antonio, and boom, the Raptors got him. Rest is history. That's why I think people see that example of Kawhi Leonard, and then they apply that to the recent trade rumors with James Harden, because they go, well, this is almost exactly that strategy where you have a guy who's unhappy, who's a tier 1 player in the league. He's the guy you got to go after. That is the answer to your question of how do you acquire a top tier player who you can build a championship around. Now, obviously, the Raptors have so far been unsuccessful in acquiring such a player. I don't know. What are your thoughts on Harden? Like, is that something that, like, would you have him? I know Boston was interested in that with Jaylen Brown. Would you see should the Raptors have made that move with Siakam and possibly OG going the other way to get someone like Harden?
So I'm going to be biased here. You can tell me if I'm way off. As a Celtics fan, and you're going to probably agree with this. As a Celtics fan, I like the fact that they drafted Jaylen Brown. I was with them since they drafted him. And even though I know he'll never be as good as James Harden is right now, the fact that him and Marcus Smart are like the homegrown guys, I enjoy watching them play. They mean something to me. James Harden won't mean anything to me. Mm-hmm. And sure, he'll help them compete. They might even get to the finals, and that's great. But he's there for 2 years and he's gone. And then you're starting over again, kind of with Jason Tatum and whatever scraps you got when James Harden leaves. I don't like the way that sounds. I'm not very thirsty for a championship as a fan. I know some fans just say, whatever you got to do to win a championship. I get it. And I totally understand logically where that comes from. As a Celtics fan, I wouldn't be happy with it. And sure, once you get the final, I'll be happy. From the Raptors' perspective, again, Siakam, on the outside looking in, he's good. He's going to be a good player. He's young enough where you got 5, 6, 7 years left of him playing at a whatever level he reaches. He's going to be better than he is now. I think he's going to be maybe not as good as he was to start last year, 25, 7, and 4 or whatever, but he's going to fall somewhere in the range where he's going to be a good player. And if your goal is championship or bust, Lowry only has another year or two of high level play. If that's the goal, I just don't see, like you said, with the defense as it is now, even if you get James Harden, if you can't stop anyone, is that calculated risk worth it? Right? You're getting a top 5 player. You got him for 2 years, however long, 3 years. With Kyle Lowry, that's a great start. Do you have the prerequisite pieces around them to even make it matter? So that's where the question comes. And you can tell me more than I can tell you at that stage.
Yeah, I sort of had convinced myself that, I mean, if the goal is to win a title as quickly as possible or as responsibly as possible, OG going the other way would hurt because Harden would have nobody left to play with really at that point. That would be the argument against that trade. But overall, am I tied to Pascal Siakam or OG Anunoby from like oh my God, we're losing this talent? No. I don't have any like emotional attachment to these players by any means, nor do I think they're going to be like top tier one players. You know what I mean?
Brutal, man. You're ruthless, man.
I mean, I'm calling a spade here. I don't think this opinion is. I think everybody thinks this. To be honest with you, I don't think this is a massive opinion. But before we talk about the Raptors a little, yeah, go ahead.
Real quick aside. Are there any players on the Raptors that are just okay? That's a non-starter. I actually love that player. I want him. Is it Kyle Lowry, that guy that you're like?
Well, no, Kyle Lowry probably be the other. If this season goes down the tank, I mean, Kyle Lowry. I mean, we sort of have to talk about trading him because it might be just better for him to go play.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I'm saying as far as hey, we can get James Harden, but they want Kyle Lowry. Is that out of the picture?
I mean, what's the point? I mean, who's he going to play with? That's the thing, right? I mean, I don't doubt that the Raptors have the assets to acquire somebody like James Harden. It's just that there's going to be nobody left to play with. Yeah, that's the problem with that trade. Man, let's talk a little bit about the Celtics and then come back to the Raptors to round it off. Man, it's scary how good Tatum is at 22. Like sometimes I check his age, I triple check his age, and then I'm like, 22, man, 5 more years in the league, he's gonna be mind blowing, and he's only gonna be 27. I can't think back to a player. I mean, I guess I can. I have to go really back. With that level of talent, with that level of production, that early in his career.
Yeah, it's a really good feeling. It's funny because I feel a lot of times people do kind of overlook Jaylen Brown because Jaylen's a year older and playing, maybe a half step below, but he's there, man. They're great. Yeah. And that's what we know that to win at a high level in the NBA, wings are the thing. I say it a lot, right? Long, switchy, can score from different levels. Like you need that at some level to be a contender. And so the fact that we got 2 of them that play at a high level is a great feeling. And it's almost it's at this what I'm saying about as far as trade everything to get Harden. I'm enjoying the journey right now. And, in a couple of years, maybe things feel different. But right now it's great because we feel like the sky is the limit. I can almost imagine how the Pacers felt with a young Paul George showing so much potential at 22, whatever. So, the guy can score from all levels. He's getting taller.
Getting taller. I can't believe that. He's still getting taller.
It's incredible. Like tonight, he had a couple shots. Like he caught that ball in the post. The double was coming. No hesitation. Spin and shoot. Yeah, and that's that's in the future. He'll be doing that. Like, it's a great feeling. And I thought last year the Raptors were a really tough competition, and then to see tonight with no Kemba, no Smart, and they kind of handled it kind of easily just because of that. Those 2 guys they make such a difference, and they're put so much pressure on the defense. So it's remarkable to watch him and Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, and they really have the Raptors' number in the backcourt. I mean, I wrote about this extensively during the postseason against the Celtics series, is that Tatum in the backcourt with Van Vliet at the 2 is just a nightmare matchup for the Raptors because the guy can take him in the block. He can, and forget about the taking him into the block and all that stuff. He can look over him. Like he can navigate, he can look left or right without any problems. He has no vision obstruction, and he's a great passer, so he can pick out players after driving. The Raptors do not. I don't see how the Raptors can stop that unless they actually put OG full time on Tatum and then refuse to concede switches, because the Raptors switch a lot. And when they switch, they always end up with having a smaller guy on Tatum, which is exactly what the Celtics want. And it's becoming a little tiresome to watch that. As much as I enjoy Tatum, I will admit, I hate the Celtics with all my, with my heart and soul, but I do enjoy watching Tatum. And oh God. But watching him against Van Vliet, it just flat out hurts, man.
Yeah, and you know what? Celtics had a similar problem with Kemba last year in the playoffs. Sure, we beat, it was a great series against you guys, and then they played the Heat. And what did the Heat do? They just picked on Kemba.
Yeah.
And Kemba, I looked at Kemba's numbers; they weren't bad. He scored 19 a game, didn't shoot incredibly terrible, but they just picked on him to the point where, like, I've realized that if the Celtics want to be a true contender, I don't know if Kemba Walker can be on the floor.
Yeah,
because the best teams are going to just take advantage of that. And let's go back to the Raptors. You have not one but two guys, and Kyle Lowry's not a defensive liability at all. We know that, right? He's like a fire plug. He's strong as a horse. He doesn't get picked on. But having two guys like Fred VanVleet back there too is like it makes it, the margin for error is so slim. And I think, like you said, with those two big guys out of there now who are so smart and can erase our mistakes, that margin's almost gone. And so that's the next thing. I think actually the Raptors, if they could somehow find a defensive big. Aaron Baines is a space eater, and he hasn't been. You can tell me, I don't think he hasn't been that good this year.
No. I mean, and one of the side effects of not. Again, we go back to, I mean, I know I call them like all-star level players in Ibaka and Gasol, and technically they're not. I get it. But to the Raptors, they were extremely important players because one of the things both of those guys were very, very good at was pick and roll. The Raptors pick and roll game is much weaker this year than it was last year because you had Ibaka as the pop option and Gasol as the roll option. Gasol obviously could be used as a pivot guy at the elbow to, like, as a passer as well. And you mentioned Aaron Baines. Baines doesn't do that. The only thing Baines can do is roll to the rim hard as long as there is relatively little congestion in the paint. Like if there's a guy between him and the paint, the guy doesn't have a great spin move or any other thing that can like negotiate that. So unless it's a clear path, we're sort of dead in the water. Chris Boucher, if you ask, 100 Raptor fans right now, I would say, 99 of them would rank Chris Boucher as the best big man on offense, at least, because he actually has a pop game. He also blocks a lot of shots. So he's got a decent 3-point shot. Second, they wouldn't even put Baines. They would probably put Alex Len just because he's a big guy who wandered. You're cringing, man, but I'm telling you what the reality is, right?
He's so bad.
Len number
he's
two.
He's so bad. He's so bad. And I haven't been watching. Baines in his 3-point shooting. He hasn't been making threes. He hasn't been shooting them. Because pick and pop was sometimes my daughter took ballet classes a while back. Yes, the twinkle toes.
Yeah, and she's like do a little twirl. I expect Baines to do that twirl every time he goes up for a three. Like he kind of leans forward. It's a little awkward. It's not pretty, and it certainly is a shot that any defense would be willing for him to take.
To concede.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And that's the thing, right? The Raptors offense is taking shots that the defense is comfortable with them taking. And that kind of boils down to that.
I guess the last couple of years, though, they were so good at him, right? Obviously with Kawhi, because Kawhi was elite from everyone on the floor. You could get out on the break with Pascal. OG showed, like last season at least, was a very capable 3-point shooter. Kyle obviously could, score mid-range, wherever he needed to. Fred was a menace from deep last year. And you know what? I get it. It's been a few games. They must look really bad. Yeah. But Raptors fans out there listening, I mean, they only can go up. We've seen the ceiling of these guys, and it's not this. VanVleet's going to start making, tonight he played really great offensively. So the shots coming back. Siakam just has to find his sweet spot to get his confidence back. And, Lowry's always going to be the ringleader. So it's going to look better. The question is how much better.
Well, I see a fork in the road here, to be honest with you. I see this team going in. I don't think standing, maybe give it maybe a 6 or 7, maybe 10 more games and see what you really got. Because they always say a quarter of the season is probably a 1/3 or a quarter of the season is good enough to see what you got. And at that point at the trade deadline, the Raptors really have to make a decision. Do they have a contender or do they need to kind of retool? And whatever that decision is, I think we'll see significant change at the deadline if the status quo continues, because if we do want to compete, then you might see the Raptors make a big move, maybe Beal or somebody else, or try to do something. And if they don't see that as being a feasible option, then they might just go, okay, let's kind of blow it up and reset with Siakam and Fred and gear up for next year, something like that. I don't know. But status quo seems untenable.
3 questions for you. Real easy questions. What do you think you can get for Kyle Lowry at the deadline? If you, like you said, you decide, okay, this isn't working. Lowry, we owe you better than this. We want to get you to at least a team that's, kind of contending. Do you have any ideas? Any idea trades for that?
You can certainly get a lot of salary cap relief for him because it's an expiring deal, so you could probably do something there. But from a talent perspective, like you're not going to get a number one guy, obviously, but you still can get a starting NBA player, right? You're going to get a starter in back. But I'm not even sure if the Raptors trade Kyle Lowry, they necessarily want a mediocre starter. They might just trade him for like picks or something like that to kind of shore up their asset base so that they can make a bigger trade in the future. Maybe that's something that you can do with Kyle Lowry.
So, wow, not even a trade like, hey, we owe him to get him to a good team. You're just saying, all right, well, we got to move him.
No. I think Kyle Lowry has veto over any trade the Raptors propose to him. I don't know that for sure, but I think the way Masai speaks of Lowry, with what the fans think of him, I think Lowry will decide if he wants to go to another team, and he gets to probably pick from a pick of teams.
Okay, second second question. What do you think it would take to get Bradley Beal?
Bradley Beal, I think, can be had without. Well, Siakam would get him, I think. I think Siakam would get him. I know we just come off a horrible Siakam game overall, and he's had a poor season. I do think that as a centerpiece of the trade, those two should be comparable. And then you can throw in a couple of guys here and there, whether it be Malachi Flynn or somebody else. I feel.
I think Beal's obviously Beal is not on the Kevin Durant level. Obviously, not on the not the Kawhi level. But Beal is that next level of high level player, Dame scorer. He's right there. I think, and he has a lot left on that contract too, right? So that I think it'd take a little more, like maybe Siakam and Van Vliet, which I don't think the money works there because they're both paying a lot of money.
Yeah,
but I think it would take sizably more than Pascal. You got to really sweeten that pot, I think.
Okay, fair. I mean, I can. I mean, I was going to throw in maybe OG in there, but I think OG and Siakam would, I think, definitely do it. I would imagine, but what the hell?
That and some picks, maybe. Yeah. That and maybe a handful of like juicy picks on the line. I can see that. Okay. Third question: what would you give the Celtics for Robert Williams right now?
What would I give for Robert Williams?
He's long. He's athletic. He's young. He can block shots. He has a high ceiling.
Robert Williams does not solve too many of our problems. So
really, you don't think so? You don't think he can anchor or be a better defensive anchor?
I mean, sure. Like, I mean, is he better than most bigs we have right now? Yes. Does he change the equation to the point where the Raptors directionally change their season? No.
Don't think so? Okay. I mean, is there any center out there that you can actually like without moving? I guess this is third question. Like
Vucevic.
Really?
I mean, I'd look at Vucevic.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, yeah.
Really?
I'm talking about realistic centers. I mean, I'm Anthony Davis is the answer to my question, but I'm talking about realistically. Yeah.
But see, even Vooch, like, I guess he's not a bad defender, but he might be a lot of Jonas, except for the 3-point shot. You don't think like a guy like I can't think of anybody because Dwayne Dedmon sucks now.
Brutal, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Vucevic might fit in nicely because the Raptors definitely do need some 3-point shooting from the big position. They're not.
You know who would be great for you guys? Kim Birch and Rashawn Holmes. I know they're ungettable because they're on good contracts with their teams. Nobody's gonna just give them away. But a player like that, rim runs, can play a little defense, block shots, stay in the dunkers area, and crash the boards. I know it's not great, and you're saying you don't think it would turn the season around. The way I look at it is now you make the other bigs fall into a natural order, and so now instead of having to worry about you'd have Baines back in his 15 minutes a night versus 23 minutes a night. You'd have you could platoon him and Boucher back. I don't know. You don't think that would really change things?
I'm going to go back to the point that you made about, I mean, the lack of a tentpole player, right? Yeah. I mean, if that's what our goal is, like, why are we wasting time like with riffraff? I mean, frankly, I mean, these are decent players, but I mean,
you know what this is?
Here, why are you shooting here?
You know what this is? This is when you've had a taste of the very best. And now you don't even want to worry about team building at the lower levels. You're like, no. I don't want to go from, because right now They're bad. They're like really bad. You're like, I don't want to go from bad to middle of the pack. You're like, I just want to go from bad to top of the heap. And I think sometimes it's maybe little steps. I think everyone looks so much better with a real defensive center behind them. I think everything kind of rejiggers and kind of resets to where it's supposed to be. And that kind of reinvigorates the team. That's where I'm coming from, where I'm thinking about moves like little moves like that. So I don't know.
You know what, James, man, I think that's a fantastic point. And I think maybe that's the dose of reality and sensibility that that Raptor fans need to swallow right now. Is to take a good hard look at where the team is and what the potential next move. Maybe our mindset, as you said, shouldn't be Beal or Harden or these guys. It's how do you retool with decent contracts and you become good over a number of 2-3 years, maybe, instead of getting a quick fix like we did with Kawhi. I think maybe that's where we land in this conversation, is maybe kind of set our eyes a little bit lower, although it feels kind of giving up on a dream. But there'll be more.
You've tasted it. And now, even though everybody understood, he's only over here for a minute. You won the championship and everybody understands, but you want it again. And you want it so badly. So I can feel you. But yeah, man, it's just, I feel like, again, the energy around that team was so positive and happy last year. Even, hey, you took the Celtics down to the strips and stripping down to the studs, and you got it right there. And I thought coming through this year, everyone would kind of ride that wave, but it almost feels like everything's kind of unraveling from 2 years ago. Yeah. And it's so simple when you look at it. Like you said it, you just lost your two centers and you replaced them with Aaron Baines and more of a skinny 3-point shooting Chris Boucher. That might be that to me seems to be like the defining thing. So I really feel if somehow Toronto could find a defensive, even like I said, just even a Clint Capella would do wonders. Mm-hmm. Do wonders, I think, for how you feel right now. Because then the Raptors will actually look like a team again that wants to play basketball.
Well, the return of Bismack Biyombo. How about that?
Oh, my God. Oh, God.
James, man, thank you so much for coming on, taking some time to talk to us, man. Looking forward to your work. Follow James on the screen. You see Snotty Drippin'. Great. How'd you come up with that name? I love that. Love that handle.
I'm a big Scottie Pippen fan back in the day.
Same here, man. I had the Nike Airs with the big AIR with the black and white shoes. I mean, those were my shoes back then, man.
I'm pretty sure most of your listeners might already know me from the whole Temecula fiasco. So, that was me. And so, yeah. So,
do you think Pippen got a fair shake in the documentary?
I think so. I know he didn't like the way he came off. I mean, I don't think they dogged him. I mean, everything they said was true.
Yeah,
I remember the headache game. I remember the migraines. I remember he came through when they needed him. So he played with a bad back. I know he didn't like it, but I thought, Pippen was great. Michael Jordan was just greater.
Yeah.
When you play with MJ, you play with MJ. That's what it was.
Yeah. No. And everybody kind of accepted that.
Yeah.
All right. James, thanks, man.
You the man, bro. Thanks for having me on.